welcome to Program with Sam, and this is Java Lesson 6. So thus far we've been talking about saving variables and states of application just by using text files. So writing their values to the text file, reading them in from the text file, and then just setting the variables accordingly. But Java, in fact, has a set of classes, or rather one particular class, that allows you to save entire objects and those stored within it. And this process is called serialization. It utilizes an interface that allows us to then essentially write our objects to a file with something called an object output stream, or read them in using an object input stream. And today that's what we're going to be taking a look at. So first, we're going to need some sort of object that we can actually then save. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a data class, and we're just going to have some sort of dummy fields in here, dummy variables, and a constructor. And we'll probably put a toString method in as well that allows us to just prove that A, the object exists in the application, and that B, it will then allow us to save it. So we'll make a string name and an age and perhaps, I don't know, like an int, maybe income, just dummy variables that we can then use to just prove that the object is set up and that we're using the object in the application. As I said, we're going to need a constructor, so it'll just take some arguments that we can then use to actually set the parameters or set the fields of the object rather. Lastly, we're just going to need that toString function, and what we'll do here is we'll just have it return some sort of thing that says the person's name is X years old and has an income of Y per year, something like that. So now we have our dummy class set up. All we need to do is make it serializable. And to do this, we're going to use implements serializable. Now this is because serializable is an interface. And as we learned in the last tutorial, interfaces are implemented with implements. So if we go ahead and do that, we should be then good to actually save the objects made by this class. It's worth noting that we're also going to be including the serial version UID. Now what this means is it means that when the deserialization process happens, the Java compiler and the thing that's loading the classes understands which object it's trying to create, or rather for which class of object it's trying to create. For instance, if you have two classes that share the same name, you may need this to then differentiate between those objects when it comes to actually deserializing. If the serial version UID doesn't match the object that you're trying to load, then it's going to throw an invalid class exception and you'll encounter an error. It's worth noting that the serial version UID has to be static, has to be final, and has to be long. But other than that, you're pretty much given free rein to have whatever serial version UID you want. So the next step is going to be to create a class that actually allows us to read and write our objects to files. So in order to do this, I've gone and set up a class called file serialization, and what this is going to do is it's going to have two static functions. We're going to have a write file and a read file, and what this will take is it'll take a string file path and the actual object that we want to save called object. And it's going to be very similar to the file handlers that we've seen before, where you sort of create the file, have the input stream. The only differentiation here is that instead of having a buffered input stream or a buffered writer or whatever, we have our object input stream or our object output stream that takes the file input/output stream as the underlying stream. So what I will do is I will go ahead and create this class and then cut to it in a second. So this is the input function, or the write file function. We start by creating the file using the file path, the input stream using the file, and the object input or output stream using the underlying stream there. We then just use write object. So what we're going to do is we're now going to write the read object function, or read file function, and this is going to follow a very similar format. It's going to take the string file path, not an object obviously though, because we're not trying to save an object, we're trying to read in an object. The difference here then is that in the return value of the function, we're returning an object. We're then going to do the try and catch. I'm going to fail miserably because I can't type today. We want exception. Then we're going to put file, and instead of a file output stream, it's going to be a file input stream, and it's going to be the same for the object output stream. So what I'll do is I'll cut away to this when it's finished. And that's the end result. It does much the same thing. We declare a null object, we try and read in the object using the input stream, and then we just return the object at the end of the function. So now we're ready to test, and what we're going to do is we're going to have the main function to do all the testing for us. I've set one up here. It works by creating a data object. We then output it to show that it's there, save it. We then overwrite that data object to show that we've created something new, outputting it again to demo. And then the last thing we're going to do is read in from the file the old data object and output to the console again to prove that this read in object has actually replaced the original, and to kind of prove that the object serialization has worked. So that's the premise for the function. What we're going to do now is give it a cheeky run. So there we go. It's gone Sam, it's gone Kevin, it's gone Sam. So we know that the function has worked, and if you see in the left-hand corner of the project window where there's test outputs, that will be where the serialized object is saved. That's it for this lesson, a bit of a shorter one today, but next time we'll be looking at Java effects. You'll be seeing how to download, how to install, the scene builder, and then we're going to look at how to create a very basic application using Java effects. If you'd like to follow me at ProgramSamBlog, or follow the blog directly at programwithsam.co.blog, that would be much appreciated.